Hey, it's Jeff, the Startup Therapist, and I am here with a fantastic guest. At Startup Therapist, we focus on the people part of startups, and potentially no decision is more important in starting your business than the name of your company and the name of your product. And there's potentially no one better in the entire country to talk about that than Danny Altman. Hey, Danny.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
Great.
Good. Danny is the head and the founder of a boutique naming firm out in on the West Coast in the Bay Area called 100 Monkeys. And you may have heard of 100 Monkeys because they are seen as one of the experts in the naming field. You'll see them in Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur magazine, etc. all the time. Danny has named, how many companies or products, Danny, would you guess you've named over the years?
One at a time. It's probably in the hundreds by now, yeah.
Hundreds, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you've got a whole firm, and this is all that you guys do, right? This is your core focus.
Yeah,
okay.
That's what we do.
So I've got the right guy.
It's not the other Danny. Yeah, you got the right one. Yeah.
We're going to focus today on some of the mistakes that founders make in naming their business, naming their product. We'll also talk a bit about renaming, so how to know when it's right with time to rename your business. So that's the focus of our discussion today. I think it'll be really interesting for founders and entrepreneurs because would you agree, Danny, that the first key element of marketing is the name of the business and the product? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, it's actually the beginning of the conversation with the people that you're talking to. So it's always good to have that beginning be the place that you really want to start, as opposed to having to explain something or like go on around the mulberry bush before you get to your story.
So one of the things that you've told me, and here's a disclaimer, you've named 4 startups that I've been part of.
Oh my God, has it been that many?
One of the key things that you've taught me, and I don't want to misquote you, is that choosing an existing word or phrase which may already have some emotional connotation is much more powerful or much easier than potentially a made-up word or name or phrase, because then you need to really establish, well, what is that? Because it's a made-up name. Am I getting that right? Has that really been key to your success?
Yeah, I think you're making it a lot harder if you are presenting somebody with something that they've never seen or heard before. And there's a lot of people who do like try to come up with a unique letter string just because it's easy to trademark or it's easy to get the URL. And our feeling is that's absolutely the wrong way to do it.
So what would you say to an entrepreneur who's hung up in getting the URL and says, well, Danny, you've given me 5 names and none of the URLs are available, so I've got to make up a word?
Yeah, I mean, we've got guys in meetings who are like, they're looking up the URLs as we're presenting the names. It's just like, it's really annoying because it's actually about the marketing. I mean, in the old days, you used to try to pack a lot of keywords into the name of your company and into the URL, but that's just not the way the search engines work these days. So the bottom line is you don't have to worry about that. There's all kinds of options for URLs a lot of them are pretty inexpensive. We've had clients spend like literally $500,000 on like the perfect URL only to, have their business go down the tubes like, a couple of years later, that kind of stuff.
What's an example real quick of a client where the URL was not available and it still worked fine?
Oh, I can't think.
Okay, maybe we'll come back to
there somewhere. Yeah.
So what are some of the big mistakes that founders make when first naming their companies? If you were, to tell our viewers, most of whom are involved in startups, what are the biggest mistakes they make?
There are so many. I'd say the first one is that, we all name our dogs and cats and kids. And so the first reaction is, oh, that's easy. And yeah, it may be, easy to do the kind of naming that's in the family, but you run into so many other problems and issues in terms of like when you're naming a company. And the most obvious one is trademark. When you're having those anguished discussions about what to name your kids, you don't have to call in a trademark attorney.
Right. Right. What I'm sure you work with a lot of boards and investors and CEOs. How do you
Yeah.
even begin to come up with a name when naming is so subjective? I mean, it's so personal. How can you even possibly get everyone on the same page when you're recommending a name?
Well, a big part of our process is about making it more objective, and it's to try to fight that subjectivity because um, the tendency that everyone has when you're presenting names is to say, I like it, I don't like it. And for us, those are not really helpful comments. What we want to know is, I like it because, or I don't like it because it gives us some clues. But the bottom line for us is that we always name two objectives. And so when you're naming two objectives, you always have that to go back to say,
I
are
see.
we on the right track or not? And we encounter so many companies who have been trying to do this on their own. And they're like, what happens is that they're no further along a month or two into the process than they were at the very beginning because they don't have a process.
What's an example of an objective criteria, if you will, that you might identify with a client at the beginning of the process?
Well, there's some criteria that are related to, we want a name that has got some meaning, and that goes back to that English language, something that people really understand. We're looking for some poetry in the name because
And what do you
you're going
mean
to be.
by poetry? It sounds
Well,
great,
it's
but
the
what
way,
does that mean?
yeah, it's the way the name rolls off your tongue. You're going to be saying your name a million times. If there's some awkwardness to the name or it doesn't like really flow, you just, making it harder for yourself. So there's a number of both general criteria like that and then project specific criteria, which we always have, um, that says, well, it's very important for this to convey the following idea. But it's a very narrow set of criteria because the tendency is for companies to say, well, we want our name to do the following 10 things. And if you draw all of those circles, the target zone is very, very
Right.
small.
You're just not going to find it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, we run into a lot of companies, there'll be too many cooks in the kitchen. And this is always a problem because I think the buck has got to stop with the founder. And sometimes they're just looking for naming is kind of like the fire hydrant that everybody likes to pee on. So they feel, well, here's a way for me to get other people in the company involved in our collective fate.
Right. But that can
That's
be
not a good idea.
that's a mistake because it's just too
It
many
is a
people
mistake.
involved.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right.
we generally will limit it to 3 or 4 people, and
Got it.
that's it. And
Okay.
and and we're very strong when we talk about process with companies because this isn't something that most entrepreneurs do a lot, so they don't really have a chance to get good at it. And since we do it all the time,
Right.
we take the benefit of that, with all of the mistakes that we've seen people make, and try to build that into a process that kind of steers people clear of some of those things.
So a founder might only name one business in their career, maybe two.
Yeah.
You name that in a day or a week. So you've done
Yes,
hundreds
exactly.
and hundreds of these engagements. I happen to know you're pretty modest. I'm guessing it's closer to 1,000, but you've named a ton of companies and products. And so just with that process comes a skill that you've developed, a muscle you've developed.
Right, right. And that, that muscle is kind of it's a collectivity. We have a number of people at the company who are really good at this. So it's not just it's not just any one person. It's like, it's an MO that we've developed that kind of, that really captures the essence of what somebody is trying to do. And then everybody in the company is really well schooled in, what's a good name versus not a good name. And another thing that we do is we have something called naming school, and we put all of our clients through naming school. And it's a way to teach them how to be constructive participants in the process. And when you tell people, this is the way to do it, take my word for it,
Right.
we've done this before, they're really actually pretty grateful, and a lot of them, sort of say, "Wow, this is just like being in school again." Okay, you're going to slap our wrists if we do it the
So
wrong way.
Danny, you require clients to go through this.
Yes,
That's great.
absolutely.
I'm sure
Yeah.
there's a lot of crappy clients in the naming business if you don't agree up front on what the rules of the road are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you are very clear and you do set out the rules. This is like, it's important, but they've also got 6 million other things on their
Yeah.
minds. And so if you can get them to relax and to sort of feel like, okay, we've got this one covered, and that's, how it works. It's kind of like by agreement, we're going to go through the following steps. And at the end of that process, we're going to have a name that we really like and you really like, and that's going to have like a really good shot at getting through trademark.
Got it. I'd love to talk about some specific examples. That's the fun part. So
Yeah.
maybe you can think about some names that you think are wonderful, but more importantly, to help us understand why they achieve their objective, so that's not subjective to you, to the point, and then maybe some that miss the mark that you're not a big fan of. But
Yeah.
why don't we start with the name of your firm, 100 Monkeys? Obviously, 100 Monkeys is a name that's so unexpected compared to Name Lab and Name This and Name That, all the names
Yes.
of these naming companies, which to me are just so unoriginal and uninspired. Tell us about 100 Monkeys. What does that even mean?
Well, it's an old writer's joke. 100 monkeys at 100 typewriters, and eventually you'll get a sonnet of Shakespearean quality. So you obviously have to be really patient, and most of the people that we're working with don't have that kind of time. So it's. I mean, if you can make somebody smile or you can make somebody ask a question when you put your name out there, and it's obviously important for us because we want to I mean, we really believe in branding, and so we want to say, well, we actually, we not only, believe this stuff, this is what we do.
So it lets you
This
tell
is
a story, or
Yeah.
it almost begs the question. If I say, what's the name of your firm, and you say 100 Monkeys, the next thing out of my mouth kind of has to be 100 Monkeys. What
Yeah.
is that? Tell me about that.
Exactly.
That creates the opening and the space for you to then tell the story versus you shoving it down my throat.
Yes.
Okay.
Or am I just putting something out there that's either so flat or not? Because I mean, the first rule is that you've got to be interesting.
Yeah.
And you've got to arouse some curiosity. You want to make people smile. You want to make people think. I mean, there's a variety of ways to go. Everything, 100 Monkeys is a little sort of light and flip because we're a creative company, so we can get away with that. But if you look at the names that we do for our clients,
Yeah. So let's talk about. Give us a couple that really you think demonstrate how this can work.
Yeah. So we worked for a company, and all of these companies had like really boring names. When they come to us, it's like they know that they have a problem. It's not like once in a while we'll get somebody who says, "Could you tell us if we have a good name or not?" Most of the time, they're coming to us with a certain amount of pain.
Right.
And they know they want to get somewhere. They know they want to tell an interesting story, but they're just too close to it, and they just wouldn't know how to go about it. So one company was a guy who was Apple's education guy in China for 5 years and came back here and decided that he was going to upend the college textbook market because college kids are walking around with 25 pounds of books on their back, and it's creating a lot of business for chiropractors, but it's not doing a lot for their study habits. And so what we did was, in terms of identifying the objective, we decided that we wanted to capture the excitement of learning, because that's when all of a sudden that 25 pounds becomes like a half a pound iPad.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, it's like
Right.
I've got this big weight off of my back.
Right.
And so the name that we eventually got to, and I have to say that, it's like, well, we picked, it's like a lot of work to get there. It's not, it's not
like you just came up with it.
you
Right.
pull it out of the air. But the name that we did get to was Inkling, and the reason that we went there was because it's like, how when you go to the library and you're working on a paper, but then you get interested in something else, and that's the stuff you really love
Yeah.
to
You
do.
get
Is
you get an
because
inkling of an idea to take it in a
yeah,
different direction.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's off topic,
Got it.
but it's like
That's great.
I'm really into it. So we wanted to capture the excitement of learning,
That's great.
and so that's what
Give us
that's.
give us another one or two that you think really were dramatic changes.
Well, this was not so much dramatic change because it was a brand new company. It's a security company, a cybersecurity company in the UK. And we helped them develop their strategy, which was really to go after, because this guy had like a Rolodex like you wouldn't believe. And so basically the strategy was to uh, work directly with the CEO and the board of a company, because those people don't have a clue what's
Right.
going on
Right.
with cybersecurity, and it's their asses on the line,
Yeah.
because if there's a problem, they
Personally,
could lose.
yeah.
Yeah, they could lose their job. And so the name that we got to was remora, and a remora is a fish that cleans sharks.
It kind of
So
swims alongside, right?
yeah, it swims alongside, and it like does the scrubbing and the
Yeah.
cleaning off the particles and stuff. And so this whole idea of kind of coming alongside a big company
Got
and
it.
kind of helping them, it just was a kind of a dramatic thing. And sometimes the story is only internal. You don't necessarily even have to tell the
Yeah.
story publicly, but it gives people inside the company a sense of, oh, okay,
Right.
this is why we're doing.
This is what we do. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's talk about the really fun stuff, which are one or two names that you don't think work. Maybe you probably didn't come up with them, but help us by comparison understand a naming gone wrong.
Well, I just what I did was I went to they had a list of names in the paper a couple of weeks ago of like potential unicorn companies, and so I was looking, because it's funny, every time you look. What's really amazing is that there was a movie reviewer in New York, and he said this fabulous thing, which was, "Thank God for all the terrible movies, because if it wasn't for terrible movies, how would you know what a good movie was?"
That's true. Right.
And so every time we go into a particular category and we look at, well, okay, what's going on here? It's always the same.
Yeah.
There's like,
it's terrible.
95% really, really bad names. And, every once in a while somebody, a blind squirrel finds an acorn,
Right.
that
Right.
kind of thing. So I don't know. I just looked at a couple of, there's a delivery service called Deliveroo.
Oh.
A similar kind of one called DoorDash.
Oh God. DoorDash.
DoorDash.
Oh, DoorDash.
Running from door to door, whatever they do. There's a woman's. And these are all companies that somebody thinks they're going to make it.
Yeah.
That does some kind of fashion service for women. That's called Stitch Fix. Say that 10 times fast.
So Stitch Fix is a good example because it's a unicorn company, or might be. What is objectively, not just you don't like the name, because I know it's more than that. What is objectively the problem with a name like that? Stitch Fix or DoorDash?
Well, I think it sort of fails. Okay, if a name is like a lot of other names in the category, it's automatically a place where we don't go.
Got it.
Your job is to be interesting and different, and then of course you get to different for a good reason, not just different, to be different. So a lot of these sound like other names in the category, so it's very hard for people to kind of get out of that rut.
They're almost too obvious, right?
Yeah, they're too obvious, or they're like kind of trying too hard, or they're too flip. I mean, one of the things you look at, how like when they do the commercial with the paint, where they paint stuff and put it in the desert for a month, because that's like being on your house for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you try to imagine like, well, what's the shelf life of this name going to be? Because hopefully the company's going to be around for a while.
Sure, for 100 years, right?
Yeah. Well, that's what the dream is, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's switch to the last topic, which is renaming. So,
yeah.
I know you work on both new companies and renaming companies or
Yeah.
products. Is there any difference in terms of methodology when it comes to renaming? And also, Danny, how do you know when it's too late to rename? Because you've got, let's say you've been around 5 years, you've got great SEO juice, you've got great traction, but something's just not working. Is there ever a time when you say, you know what, stick with what you got because you've just come too far, there's too much brand recognition or whatever?
Yes, I mean, I think you're always looking at equity. There's a lot of very successful companies that have names that are not terrific. Most of the companies that come to us they're just they haven't got there yet.
Right.
Okay. But a lot of them have had a fair amount of experience, and the name either is just a dud and they want to do better, or the company has taken a 90-degree turn to the left. And that name really is kind of hurting them now because they have to explain their way out of it.
Right.
So there are some cases, usually when people come to rename, which is a lot of the work that we do, they're really quite serious about we have a problem and we want to get out of this.
Is there ever a time when it's too late and you say, you know what, it's just not worth it? You've got too much in this name already?
Yeah, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen a lot because I think those same forces are because a company has to have some kind of a collective will, or sometimes you'll get a new CEO. I mean, that's happened. And so a new CEO can be looking at all of the marketing, and we've had that happen for sure, where CEO says it all stinks. I want you to help us. So it's like that's kind of strip it down to bare metal and kind of start from scratch. And sometimes that's a very healthy exercise. And particularly with software companies, there are companies that have been around for 5 years that are literally at square one in a sense. They've got a lot of other assets. But, from a marketing standpoint, there are times when you do want to take a fresh approach.
Great. Well, Danny, this has been incredibly helpful. How can people reach you if they're interested in even understanding whether they should consider renaming? I'm sure a lot of what you do is having conversations with people to see if it even makes sense, right?
Yeah, we have lots of those conversations. We're very happy to have them. Just type in 100 Monkeys on Google and you will find us because we believe in that marketing stuff.
And I noticed something great, Danny, which is you on your website, I think, actually list your competitors, other naming firms.
Yes, we do.
Who lists their competitors on their website?
Well, somebody who's confident in what they're doing and wants people to kind of take a look at what else is out there before they give us a call.
I think that's great. That's almost a metric of being confident and differentiated. If you're able to sleep at night with a list of your competitors on your website, you're probably doing something right.
Hopefully, but every day.
You got to earn it every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Danny.
All right, good talking to you,
Great
Jeff.
to see you when we appreciate the advice.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Take care. Bye-bye.